Hi, I'm Representative Justin Chenette of House District 134, part of Saco, with this legislative update. As most of you know, we are wrapping up the session. We have to go back on July 9th to wrap up the record number of vetoes from Governor LePage. I mean, this was a record number of vetoes this session. It seemed like almost every day we were having to deal with more and more vetoes for random reasons. So we're going back on the 9th to deal with that. But the budget is passed, and this is what the document looks like. The over 700 pages of budget going line by line. So if anybody wants to read it, just let me know. And what I found interesting really going into the budget debate on the House floor was this idea that, you know, I was trying to read this document and people were like, why are you reading the budget? Well, I want to know what's in it before I'm voting on it. But not everybody goes line by line through this. Not everybody reads the budget before they vote on it. They get the talking points from both sides and they're expected to vote on it. The rationales that you tend to hear every budget cycle, every biennium, is you should vote for this budget because it's a bipartisan proposal. You should vote for this budget because the looming state shutdown could happen. Well, you're going to find that every 2 years because guess what? There's Democrats and Republicans on appropriations. It's bound to have some bipartisan proposals in it. You're bound to have the potential of a state shutdown because guess what? July 1st is always the start of the new fiscal year. So to me, those aren't good rationales. I want to be able to vote for this budget because it's good public policy, and that should be the rationale consistently through every piece of legislation. Is this good public policy? Is this going to actually help people on Main Street get a job, afford health care, be able to send their kids to college, so on and so forth? Now, there are good pieces in this budget and there are not so good pieces in this budget. If I was to vote on individual pieces within this, I probably would not vote for it. But overall, as a comprehensive package, I voted for this budget because it's the best alternative. It restores 2/3 of municipal revenue sharing. Now, this whole municipal revenue sharing conversation really was a distraction. The governor put it in his initial budget that we're going to completely gut municipal revenue sharing. Now, this is the percentage of taxes that goes from the state back down to the local municipalities, like Saco, like Old Orchard Beach, like Biddeford, for instance, that rely on municipal revenue sharing to pay for essential programs and services like police, like fire. These are things that are critical. And when you completely gut it, that's not good. And we've actually seen a consistent decline in the amount of funding for this program. So to completely eliminate it would cripple communities and would have to force a property tax increase. Now, as we've been seeing with our local municipalities, Saco is a great example, with an 18% increase, both from a school side of things and from a municipal side of things. We can't afford any more property tax increases. I'm already seeing signs pop up on the side of the street, you know, people selling their homes because they can't afford to live here. That's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. When I get calls from people saying, you know, Justin, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't afford my home that I've always lived in. I love this community, but I can't afford it. We have to find a balance between cutting wasteful spending and raising revenue. Now, raising revenue is a convenient way for politicians to say raising taxes or raising fees. Let's not confuse that conversation. Let's be honest and real about that. But we also have to recognize that we can't gut complete programs. Now, what this budget also does is says, you know what, we have to have the Drugs for the Elderly program. The Republicans completely wanted to eliminate this program. There were debates on the House floor that said we should not be having seniors afford their medication. They need to do it on their own. That's not acceptable. When I get calls from seniors saying, you know what, you're going to sign my death warrant if you cut this program. That is not something that is a value that I share. That is not something that I feel like is a value that this community or this state shares. We treat our seniors with respect and dignity. They deserve to be able to afford their health care. That should be a God-given right. And that's just a value that I share. But This budget restores that program. So I think finding a balance between cutting wasteful spending, which could include spending $12,000 on buying bottled water for agencies. Now that might only be $12,000, but that's a step. I even put in a bill to cut my own legislative pay, which would have saved the state $300,000 a year. $300,000. Again, a drop in the bucket when we're talking about a $6.3 billion budget, but nonetheless, we have to treat a dollar as it is, a dollar. It adds up to real money. We could have saved the state $12.5 million every year, if we moved to a unicameral legislature, which essentially would eliminate the Senate, but would make our legislature run more efficiently, and we would actually get some stuff accomplished. Because more often you hear up in Augusta, oh, well, we're sending it to the Senate to die. It passes in the House, it fails in the Senate. The House of Representatives is the most direct form of representation we have, because I get to interact with about 8,500 or 8,600 residents. The Senate has a lot more than that. So there's more of a direct form of representation with the House of Representatives. So not only do we get a more direct form, it's a more efficient government, but we also save money. It should be a win-win-win. And so a lot of the bills that I propose could save the state upwards of $25 million in total, roundabout estimate. And while, again, that might be a drop in the bucket, if every legislator went through this budget and went line by line by line to find cost savings, to find different programs that, you know what, we can do without this piece. We can do without this for now. It's not a priority. We have to prioritize our spending. But we can't gut essential programs and services that people rely on. But the process is what's getting in the way of progress. And that's what I found as a newbie, as a new representative, is that the process is getting in the way. The Democrats could be in power, the Republicans could be in power, it doesn't matter. But the process is like, wait, rush, rush, rush. And the process is limiting our ability as legislators to go through this budget line by line, because the amount of power that a handful of people have on appropriations is really where it all exists. A handful of people get to decide what's in this 700-page plus document, and we have to just kind of go along with it. And while it's a little bit different than that, I have the utmost respect for those on appropriations. They literally work around the clock. They get no sleep. They don't eat, hardly, unless we bring them goodies. And so I have the utmost respect for them. It's not them, it's the process. It's like on my own committee, the State and Local Government Committee. I found millions and millions of dollars in cost savings, but nobody wanted to listen to it. Why are you going through it line by line? Well, why are we voting on it? Why even have individual policy committees if we're not going to actually treat it as not just a strong recommendation? So I have some major problems with how we're doing business in Augusta, and it has nothing to do with which party is in power. It has everything to do with reforming how we do business in order to get a 700-page document that looks a heck of a lot better than it is right now. And getting to a point where we can set aside the party differences and actually do good for people. And not just focus on short-term gains, but actually long-term solutions to the problems that we face. I don't want to keep having to deal with, oh gosh, we got to fill this hole here. We got to deal with municipal revenue sharing because the governor wanted to distract us. Oh, we got to pay the hospitals. Oh, we got to do this. Well, who's talking about the long-term economic viability of the state's economic engine? Anybody? That is what we have to be focusing on. You know, ever since the mills have left a lot of these mill towns like Saco and Biddeford, we've never really dealt with that. We kind of just sugarcoated it. And we kind of do that as a country. It's like, what are we producing anymore? What are we manufacturing? What is it that we're actually doing as a state economy? And we have to have those long-term visions. We have to really think long-term. And the process legislatively really is not apt to have those long-term conversations. It's really apt for short-term bursts. Let's deal with this more immediate issue and get done, go back to our districts and work. And yes, I'm proud of the citizen legislator. I can go back and now work in the private sector. I love that. I love that ability. But we can't ignore these other important issues. So this budget does a lot of good things and does things that I don't like. But it's not a Democratic budget. It's not a Republican budget. It's a budget of compromise. Because if this was a Democratic budget, believe you me, it would look completely different. If this was just solely a Republican budget, it will look completely different. The Republicans gave in on a few things. The Democrats had to give on a few things. That's what compromise is. It's coming together, and you have to give up a lot, and you have to give up a lot on the other side, but you get something in the middle for it, like the drugs for the elderly, like moving towards 55% share of education funding that I fought so hard for. And so there are some revenue increases, some tax increases, like sales tax will increase half a penny. Short term, it's a temporary increase. Meals and lodging, both are 1% increase. But we save municipalities from having to raise significantly their property taxes. So it's a give and take. We ensure that individuals can apply for the homestead exemption and circuit breaker. So there's a lot of different things in here that are essential. So that's sort of a quick synopsis. I say quick. But if you want more information, I implore you to go to my website at justinchenette.com, no matter what community you live in, because I have all this information. I have the entire PDF of this budget, all 700 plus pages of it, and sort of detailed synopsis of different programs like DHHS, the education department, different aspects of how this is going to impact you and your family around your dinner table. And I think that's critical. In raw information, not sort of through a political partisan lens. And if you have any questions about this budget, I'm around. I'm here locally, whether it be at the legislative office, or you can reach me online through Facebook, Twitter, or email, or even call me up. So with that, I'm Representative Justin Chenette. Stay tuned and stay connected.